Open House by P.G. Wodehouse. Mr. Mulliner put away the letter he had been reading and beamed contentedly on the little group in the bar parlour of the Angler's Rest. "Most gratifying," he murmured. "Good news?" we asked. "Excellent," said Mr. Mulliner. "The letter was from my nephew Eustace, who is attached to our embassy in Switzerland. He has fully justified the family's hopes. Doing well, is he?" "Capitally," said Mr. Mulliner. He chuckled reflectively. "Odd," he said, "now that the young fellow has made so signal a success, to think what a business we had getting him to undertake the job. At one time it seemed as if it would be hopeless to try to persuade him. Indeed, if fate had not taken a hand— Didn't he want to become attached to the embassy?" "The idea revolted him," said Mr. Mulliner. Here was this splendid opening, dangled before his eyes through the influence of his godfather, Lord Nubble of Knop, and he stoutly refused to avail himself of it. He wanted to stay in London, he said. He liked London, he insisted, and he jolly well wasn't going to stir from the good old place. To the rest of his relations, this obduracy seemed mere capriciousness. But I, possessing the young fellow's confidence, knew that there were solid reasons behind his decision. In the first place, he knew himself to be the favourite nephew of his Aunt Georgiana, relict of the late Sir Cuthbert Beasley Bart, a woman of advanced years and more than ample means. And secondly, he had recently fallen in love with a girl of the name of Marcella Tyrwhitt. "A nice sort of chump I should be, buzzing off to Switzerland," he said to me one day, when I had been endeavouring to break down his resistance. "I've got to stay on the spot, haven't I, to give Aunt Georgiana the old oil from time to time? And if you suppose a fellow can woo a girl like Marcella Tyrwhitt through the medium of the post, you are vastly mistaken. Something occurred this morning which makes me think she's weakening, and that's just the moment when the personal touch is so essential. Come one, come all, this rock shall fly from its firm base as soon as I," said Eustace, who, like so many of the Mulliners, had a strong vein of the poetic in him. What had occurred that morning, I learned later, was that Marcella Tyrwhitt had rung my nephew up on the telephone. "Hello," she said, "is that Eustace?" "Yes," said Eustace, for it was. "I say, Eustace," proceeded the girl, "I'm leaving for Paris tomorrow." "You aren't," said Eustace. "Yes, I am, you silly ass," said the girl, "and I've got the tickets to prove it. Listen, Eustace, there's something I want you to do for me. You know my canary—" "William? William is right. And you know my piker?" "Reginald?" "Reginald is correct. Well, I can't take them with me because William hates travelling, and Reginald would have to go into quarantine for 6 months when I got back, which would make him froth with fury. So will you give them a couple of beds at your flat while I'm away?" "Absolutely," said Eustace. "We keep open house, we Mulliners. You won't find them any trouble. There's nothing of the athlete about Reginald. A brisk walk of 20 minutes in the park sets him up for the day as regards exercise. And as for food, give him whatever you're having yourself. Raw meat, puppy biscuits and so on. Don't let him have cocktails. They unsettle him." "Right-ho," said Eustace. "The scenario seems pretty smooth so far. How about William?" "In William, he's a bit of an eccentric in the food line. Heaven knows why, but he likes birdseed and groundsel. Couldn't touch the stuff myself. You get birdseed at a birdseed shop. And groundsel, no doubt, at the ground sellers?" "Exactly. And you have to let William out of his cage once or twice a day, so that he can keep his waistline down by fluttering about the room. He comes back all right as soon as he's had his bath. Do you follow all that?" "Like a leopard," said Eustace. "I bet you don't." "Yes, I do. Brisk walk, Reginald. Brisk flutter, William. You've got it. All right, then. And remember that I set a high value on those two, so guard them with your very life." "Absolutely," said Eustace. "Rather, you bet. I should say so, positively." Ironical, of course, it seems now, in the light of what occurred subsequently. But my nephew told me that that was the happiest moment of his life. He loved this girl with every fibre of his being, and it seemed to him that if she selected him out of all her circle for this intensely important trust, it must mean that she regarded him as a man of solid worth and one she could lean on. "These others," she must have said to herself, running over the roster of her friends, "what are they after all? Mere butterflies. But Eustace Mulliner, that's different. Good stuff there. A young fellow of character. He was delighted also for another reason. Much as he would miss Marcella Tyrwhitt, he was glad that she was leaving London for a while, because his love life at the moment had got into something of a tangle, and her absence would just give him nice time to do a little adjusting and unscrambling. Until a week or so before, he had been deeply in love with another girl, a certain Beatrice Watterson. And then one night at a studio party he had met Marcella and had instantly discerned in her an infinitely superior object for his passion. It is this sort of thing that so complicates life for the young man about town. He is too apt to make his choice before walking the whole length of the counter. He bestows a strong man's love on girl A and is just congratulating himself when along comes girl B, whose very existence he had not suspected, and he finds that he has picked the wrong one and has to work like a beaver to make the switch. What Eustace wanted to do at this point was to taper off with Beatrice, thus clearing the stage and leaving himself free to concentrate his whole soul on Marcella. And Marcella's departure from London would afford him the necessary leisure for the process. So, by the way of tapering off with Beatrice, he took her to tea the day Marcella left, and at tea Beatrice happened to mention, as girls will, that it would be her birthday next Sunday. And Eustace said, "Oh, I say, really, come and have a bite of lunch at my flat." And Beatrice said that she would love it. And Eustace said that he must give her something top-hole as a present. And Beatrice said, "Oh no, really, you mustn't." And Eustace said, "Yes, dash it," he was resolved. Which started the tapering process nicely, for Eustace knew that on the Sunday he was due down at his Aunt Georgiana's at Whittleford-cum-Bagsley-on-Sea for the weekend, so that when the girl arrived all eager for lunch and found not only that her host was not there, but that there was not a birthday present in sight of any description, she would be deeply offended and would become cold and distant and aloof. Tact, my nephew tells me, is what you need on these occasions. You want to gain the desired end without hurting anybody's feelings. And no doubt he's right. After tea he came back to his flat and took Reginald for a brisk walk, gave William a flutter, and went to bed that night, feeling that God was in his heaven and all right with the world. The next day was warm and sunny, and it struck Eustace that William would appreciate it if he put his cage out on the window-sill so that he could get the actinic rays into his system. He did this accordingly, and having taken Reginald for his saunter, returned to the flat, feeling that he had earned the morning bracer. He instructed Blenkinsop, his man, to bring the materials, and soon peace was reigning in the home to a noticeable extent. William was trilling lustily on the window-sill. Reginald was resting from his exertions under the sofa, and Eustace had begun to sip his whisky and soda without a care in the world, when the door opened and Blenkinsop announced a visitor. "Mr. Orlando Wotherspoon," said Blenkinsop, and withdrew to go on with the motion picture magazine, which he had been reading in the pantry. Eustace placed his glass on the table and rose to extend the courtesies in a somewhat puzzled, not to say befogged, state of mind. The name Wotherspoon had struck no chord, and he could not recollect ever having seen the man before in his life. And Orlando Wotherspoon was not the sort of person who, once seen, is easily forgotten. He was built on large lines and seemed to fill the room to overflowing. In physique, indeed, he was not unlike what Primo Carnera would have been if Carnera had not stunted his growth by smoking cigarettes when a boy. He was preceded by a flowing moustache of the outsized soup-strainer kind, and his eyes were of the piercing type which one associates with owls, sergeant-majors and Scotland Yard inspectors. Eustace found himself not a little perturbed. "Oh, hello," he said. Orlando Wotherspoon scrutinised him keenly, and it appeared to Eustace with hostility. If Eustace had been a rather more than ordinarily unpleasant blackbeetle, this man would have looked at him in much the same fashion. The expression in his eyes was that which comes into the eyes of suburban householders when they survey slugs among their lettuces. "Mr. Mulliner?" he said. "I shouldn't wonder," said Eustace, feeling that this might well be so. "My name is Wotherspoon." "Yes," said Eustace. "So," Blenkinsop was saying, "and he's a fellow I've found I can usually rely on. I live in the block of flats across the gardens." Yes, said Eustace, still at a loss. Have a pretty good time. In answer to your question, my life is uniformly tranquil. This morning, however, I saw a sight which shattered my peace of mind and sent the blood racing hotly through my veins. Too bad when it's like that, said Eustace. What made your blood carry on in the manner described? I will tell you, Mr. Mulliner. I was seated in my window a few minutes ago, drafting out some notes for my forthcoming speech at the annual dinner of our Dumb Chums League, of which I am perpetual vice-president, when, to my horror, I observed a fiend torturing a helpless bird. For a while I gazed in appalled stupefaction while my blood ran cold. Hot, you said? First hot, then cold. I seethed with indignation at this fiend. I don't blame you, said Eustace. If there's one type of chap I bar, it's a fiend. Who was the fellow? Mulliner, said Orlando Wotherspoon, pointing a finger that looked like a plantain or some unusually enlarged banana. Thou art the man. What? Yes, repeated the other. You, Mulliner, the bird bullier. Mulliner, the scourge of our feathered friends. What do you mean, you Torquemada, by placing that canary on the window-sill in the full force of the burning sun? How would you feel if some pop-eyed assassin left you out in the sun without a hat to fry where you stood? He went to the window and hauled the cage in. It is men like you, Mulliner, who block the wheels of the world's progress and render societies like our Dumb Chums League necessary. I thought the bally-bird enjoyed it, said Eustace feebly. Mulliner, you lie, said Orlando Wotherspoon. And he looked at Eustace in a way that convinced the latter, who had suspected it from the first, that he had not made a new friend. By the way, he said, hoping to ease the strain, have a spot? I will not have a spot. Right-ho, said Eustace, no spot. But coming back to the agenda, you wrong me, Wotherspoon. Foolish, mistaken I may have been, but as God is my witness, I meant well. Honestly, I thought William would be tickled pink if I put his cage out in the sun. "Cha!" said Orlando Wotherspoon. And as he spoke, the dog Reginald, hearing voices, crawled out from under the sofa in the hope that something was going on which might possibly culminate in coffee sugar. At the sight of Reginald's honest face, Eustace brightened. A cordial friendship had sprung up between these two based on mutual respect. He extended a hand and chirruped. Unfortunately, Reginald, suddenly getting a close-up of that moustache and being convinced by the sight of it that plots against his person were toward, uttered a piercing scream and dived back under the sofa, where he remained, calling urgently for assistance. Orlando Wotherspoon put the worst construction on the incident. "Ha, Mulliner," he said, "this is vastly well. Not content with inflicting fiendish torments on canaries, it would seem that you also slake your inhuman fury on this innocent dog so that he runs, howling at the mere sight of you." Eustace tried to put the thing right. "I don't think it's the mere sight of me he objects to," he said. "In fact, I've frequently seen him take quite a long, steady look at me, without wincing." "Then to what, pray, do you attribute the animal's visible emotion?" "Well, the fact is," said Eustace, "I fancy the root of the trouble is that he doesn't much care for that moustache of yours." His visitor began to roll up his left coat sleeve in a meditative way. "Are you venturing, Mulliner, to criticize my moustache?" "No, no," said Eustace, "I admire it." "I would be sorry," said Orlando Wotherspoon, "to think that you were aspersing my moustache, Mulliner. My grandmother has often described it as the handsomest in the West End of London. Leonine is the adjective she applies to it. But perhaps you regard my grandmother as prejudiced. Possibly you consider her a foolish old woman whose judgments may be lightly set aside?" "Absolutely not," said Eustace. "I'm glad," said Wotherspoon. "You would have been the third man I have thrashed within an inch of his life for insulting my grandmother. Or is it," he mused, "the fourth? I could consult my books and let you know." "Don't bother," said Eustace. There was a lull in the conversation. "Well, Mulliner," said Orlando Wotherspoon at length, "I will leave you. But let me tell you this. You have not heard the last of me. You see this?" He produced a notebook. "I keep here a black list of fiends who must be closely watched. Your Christian name, if you please?" "Eustace. Age, 24. Height, 5'10". Weight, "Well," said Eustace, "I was around 10 stone 11 when you came in. I think I'm a bit lighter now. Let us say 10 stone 7. Thank you, Mr. Mulliner. Everything is now in order. You have been entered on the list of suspects on whom I make a practice of paying surprise visits. From now on, you will never know when I may or may not knock upon your door." "Any time you're passing," said Eustace. "Our Dumb Chums League," said Orlando Wotherspoon, putting away his notebook, "is not unreasonable in these matters. We of the organisation have instructions to proceed in the matter of fiends with restraint and deliberation. For the first offence we are content to warn. After that, I must remember when I return home to post you a copy of our latest booklet. It sets forth in detail what happened to J.B. Stokes, of 9 Manglesbury Mansions, West Kensington, on his ignoring our warning to him to refrain from throwing vegetables at his cat. Good morning, Mr. Mulliner. Do not trouble to see me to the door. Young men of my nephew Eustace's type are essentially resilient." This interview had taken place on the Thursday. By Friday at about 1 o'clock he had practically forgotten the entire episode, and by noon on Saturday he was his own merry self once more. It was on this Saturday, as you may remember, that Eustace was to go down to Whittleford-cum-Bagsley-on-Sea to spend the weekend with his Aunt Georgiana. Whittleford-cum-Bagsley-on-Sea, so I am informed by those who have visited it, is not a Paris or a pre-war Vienna. In fact, once the visitor has strolled along the pier and put pennies in the slot machines, he has shot his bolt as far as the hectic whirl of pleasure, for which the younger generation is so avid, is concerned. Nevertheless, Eustace found himself quite looking forward to the trip. Apart from the fact that he would be getting himself in solid with a woman who combined the possession of £100,000 in home rails with a hereditary tendency to rheumatic trouble of the heart, it was pleasant to reflect that in about 24 hours from the time he started, the girl, Beatrice, would have called at the empty flat and gone away in a piqued and raised eyebrow condition, leaving him free to express his individuality in the matter of the girl, Marcella. He whistled gaily as he watched Blenkinsop pack. "You have thoroughly grasped the programme outlined for the period of my absence, Blenkinsop," he said. "Yes, sir." "Take Master Reginald for the daily stroll." "Yes, sir." "See that Master William does his fluttering." "Yes, sir." "And don't get them mixed. I mean, don't let Reginald flutter and take William for a walk." "No, sir." "Right," said Eustace. "And on Sunday, Blenkinsop, tomorrow, that is to say, a young lady will be turning up for lunch. Explain to her that I'm not here and give her anything she wants." "Very good, sir." Eustace set out upon his journey with a light heart. Arrived at Whittleford-cum-Bagsley-on-Sea, he passed a restful weekend playing double patience with his aunt, tickling her cat under the left ear from time to time, and walking along the esplanade. On the Monday, he caught the 1:40 train back to London, his aunt cordial to the last. "I shall be passing through London on my way to Harrogate next Friday," she said as he was leaving. "Perhaps you will give me tea." "I shall be more than delighted, Aunt Georgiana," said Eustace. "It has often been a great grief to me that you allow me so few opportunities of entertaining you in my little home. At 4:30 next Friday." "Right." Everything seemed to him to be shaping so satisfactorily that his spirits were at their highest. He sang in the train to quite a considerable extent. "What ho, Blenkinsop," he said, entering the flat in a very nearly rollicking manner. "Everything all right?" "Yes, sir," said Blenkinsop. "I trust that you have enjoyed an agreeable weekend, sir?" "Topping," said Eustace. "How are the dumb chums?" "Master William is in robust health, sir." "Splendid. And Reginald?" "Of Master Reginald I cannot speak with the authority of first-hand knowledge, sir, as the young lady removed him yesterday." Eustace clutched at a chair. "Removed him?" "Yes, sir. Took him away. If you recall your parting instructions, sir, you enjoined upon me that I should give the young lady anything she wanted. She selected Master Reginald. She desired me to inform you that she was sorry to have missed you, but quite understood that you could not disappoint your aunt, and that, as you insisted on giving her a birthday present, she had taken Master Reginald." Eustace pulled himself together with a strong effort. He saw that nothing was to be gained by upbraiding the man. Blenkinsop, he realized, had acted according to his lights. He told himself that he should have remembered that his valet was of a literal turn of mind, who always carried out instructions to the letter. "Get her on the phone, quick," he said. "Impossible, I fear, sir. The young lady informed me that she was leaving for Paris by the 2 o'clock train this afternoon." "Then, Blenkinsop," said Eustace, "give me a quick one." "Very good, sir." The restorative seemed to clear the young man's head. "Blenkinsop," he said, "give me your attention. Don't let your mind wander. We've got to do some close thinking, some very close thinking." "Yes, sir." In simple words, Eustace explained the position of affairs. Blenkinsop clicked his tongue. Eustace held up a restraining hand. "Don't do that, Blenkinsop." "No, sir. At any other moment I should be delighted to listen to you giving your imitation of a man drawing corks out of champagne bottles, but not now. Reserve it for the next party you attend." "Very good, sir." Eustace returned to the matter in hand. "You see the position I am in? We must put our heads together, Blenkinsop. How can I account satisfactorily to Miss Tyrrwhit for the loss of her dog? Would it not be feasible to inform the young lady that you took the animal for a walk in the park, and that it slipped its collar and ran away?" "Very nearly right, Blenkinsop," said Eustace, "but not quite. What actually happened was that you took it for a walk, and, like a perfect chump, went and lost it." "Well, really, sir." "Blenkinsop," said Eustace, "if there is one drop of the old feudal spirit in your system, now is the time to show it. Stand by me in this crisis, and you will not be the loser." "Very good, sir." "You realise, of course, that when Miss Tyrrwhit returns, it will be necessary for me to curse you pretty freely in her presence, but you must read between the lines and take it all in a spirit of pure badinage." "Very good, sir." "Right-ho then, Blenkinsop. Oh, by the way, my aunt will be coming to tea on Friday." "Very good, sir." These preliminaries settled, Eustace proceeded to pave the way. He wrote a long and well-phrased letter to Marcella, telling her that, as he was unfortunately confined to the house with one of his bronchial colds, he had been compelled to depute the walk in the park taking of Reginald to his man Blenkinsop, in whom he had every confidence. He went on to say that Reginald, thanks to his assiduous love and care, was in the enjoyment of excellent health, and that he would always look back with wistful pleasure to the memory of their long, cosy evenings together. He drew a picture of Reginald and himself, sitting side by side in silent communion. He deep in some good book, Reginald meditating on this and that, which almost brought the tears to his eyes. Nevertheless, he was far from feeling easy in his mind. Women, he knew, in moments of mental stress, are always apt to spray the blame a good deal. And, while Blenkinsop would presumably get the main stream, there might well be a few drops left over which would come in his direction. For, if this girl, Marcella Tyrrwhit, had a defect, it was that the generous warmth of her womanly nature led her now and then to go off the deep end somewhat heartily. She was one of those tall, dark girls with flashing eyes who tend to a certain extent, in times of stress, to draw themselves to their full height and let their male vis-à-vis have it squarely in the neck. Time had done much to heal the wound, but he could still recall some of the things she had said to him the night when they had arrived late at the theatre to discover that he had left the tickets on his sitting-room mantelpiece. In 2 minutes, any competent biographer would have been able to gather material for a complete character sketch. He had found out more about himself in that one brief interview than in all the rest of his life. Naturally, therefore, he brooded a good deal during the next few days. His friends were annoyed at this period by his absent-mindedness. He developed a habit of saying, "What?" with a glazed look in his eyes, and then sinking back and draining his glass, all of which made him something of a dead weight in general conversation. You would see him sitting hunched up in a corner with his jaw drooping, and a very unpleasant spectacle it was. His fellow members began to complain about it. They said the taxidermist had no right to leave him lying about the club after removing his insides, but ought to buckle to and finish stuffing him and make a job of it. He was sitting like this one afternoon, when suddenly, As he raised his eyes to see if there was a waiter handy, he caught sight of the card on the wall which bore upon it the date and the day of the week. And the next moment a couple of fellow members who had thought he was dead and were just going to ring to have him swept away were stunned to observe him leap to his feet and run swiftly from the room. He had just discovered that it was Friday, the day his Aunt Georgiana was coming to tea at his flat, and he only had about 3.5 minutes before the kick-off. A speedy cab took him quickly home, and he was relieved on entering the flat to find that his aunt was not there. The tea table had been set out, but the room was empty except for William, who was trying over a song in his cage. Greatly relieved, Eustace went to the cage and unhooked the door, and William, after jumping up and down for a few moments in the eccentric way canaries do, hopped out and started to flutter to and fro. It was at this moment that Blenkinsop came in with a well-laden plate. "Cucumber sandwiches, sir," said Blenkinsop. "Ladies are usually strongly addicted to them." Eustace nodded. The man's instinct had not led him astray. His aunt was passionately addicted to cucumber sandwiches. Many a time he had seen her fling herself on them like a starving wolf. "Her ladyship not arrived?" he said. "Yes, sir. She stepped down the street to dispatch a telegram. Would you desire me to serve cream, sir, or will the ordinary milk suffice?" "Cream? Milk? I have laid out an extra saucer." "Blenkinsop," said Eustace, passing a rather feverish hand across his brow, for he had much to disturb him these days. "You appear to be talking of something, but it does not penetrate. What is all this babble of milk and cream? Why do you speak in riddles of extra saucers?" "For the cat, sir." "What cat?" "Her ladyship was accompanied by her cat, Francis." The strained look passed from Eustace's face. "Oh, her cat?" "Yes, sir." "Well, in regard to nourishment, it gets milk, the same as the rest of us, and likes it. But serve it in the kitchen, because of the canary." "Master Francis is not in the kitchen, sir." "Well, in the pantry or my bedroom, or wherever he is. When last I saw Master Francis, sir, he was enjoying a cooling stroll on the window-sill." And at this juncture there silhouetted itself against the evening sky a lissom form. "Here! Hi, my gosh! I say, dash it!" exclaimed Eustace, eyeing it with unconcealed apprehension. "Yes, sir," said Blenkinsop. "Excuse me, sir, I fancy I heard the front door bell." And he withdrew, leaving Eustace a prey to the liveliest agitation. Eustace, you see, was still hoping, in spite of having been so remiss in the matter of the dog, to save his stake, if I may use the expression, on the canary. In other words, when Marcella Tyrwhitt returned and began to be incisive on the subject of the vanished Reginald, he wished to be in a position to say, "True, true, in the matter of Reginald I grant that I have failed you. But pause before you speak and take a look at that canary, fit as a fiddle and bursting with health. And why? Because of my unremitting care." A most unpleasant position he would be in, if in addition to having to admit that he was one peaky down on the general score, he also had to reveal that William, his sheet anchor, was inextricably mixed up with the gastric juices of a cat which the girl did not even know by sight. And that this tragedy was imminent he was sickeningly aware from the expression on the animal's face. It was a sort of devout, ecstatic look. He had observed much the same kind of look on the face of his Aunt Georgiana when about to sail into the cucumber sandwiches. Francis was inside the room now and was gazing up at the canary with a steady, purposeful eye. His tail was twitching at the tip. The next moment, to the accompaniment of a moan of horror from Eustace, he had launched himself into the air in the bird's direction. Well, William was no fool. Where many a canary would have blenched, he retained his sang-froid unimpaired. He moved a little to the left, causing the cat to miss by a foot, and his beak, as he did so, was curved in a derisive smile. In fact, thinking it over later, Eustace realized that right from the beginning, William had the situation absolutely under control, and wanted nothing but to be left alone to enjoy a good laugh. At the moment, however, this did not occur to Eustace. Shaken to the core, he supposed the bird to be in the gravest peril. He imagined it to stand in need of all the aid and comfort he could supply. And springing quickly to the tea-table, he rummaged among its contents for something that would serve him as ammunition in the fray. The first thing he put his hand on was the plate of cucumber sandwiches. These, with all the rapidity at his command, he discharged one after the other. But though a few found their mark, there was nothing in the way of substantial results. The very nature of a cucumber sandwich makes it poor throwing. He could have obtained direct hits on Francis all day without slowing him up. In fact, the very moment after the last sandwich had struck him in the ribs, he was up in the air again, clawing hopefully. William sidestepped once more, and Francis returned to earth. And Eustace, emotion ruining his aim, missed him by inches with a sultana cake, 3 muffins and a lump of sugar. Then, desperate, he did what he should, of course, have done at the very outset. Grabbing the tablecloth, he edged round with extraordinary stealth till he was in the cat's immediate rear, and dropped it over him, just as he was tensing his muscles for another leap. Then, flinging himself on the mixture of cat and tablecloth, he wound them up into a single convenient parcel. Exceedingly pleased with himself, Eustace felt at this point. It seemed to him that he had shown resource, intelligence, and an agility highly creditable in one who had not played rugby football for years. A good deal of bitter criticism was filtering through the cloth, but he overlooked it. Francis, he knew, when he came to think the thing over calmly, would realise that he deserved all he was getting. He had always found Francis a fair-minded cat, when the cold sobriety of his judgment was not warped by the sight of canaries. He was about to murmur a word or two to this effect in the hope of inducing the animal to behave less like a gyroscope, when looking round he perceived that he was not alone. Standing grouped about the doorway were his Aunt Georgiana, the girl, Marcella Tyrwhitt, and the well-remembered figure of Orlando Wotherspoon. "Lady Beasley, Miss Tyrwhitt, Mr. Orlando Wotherspoon," announced Blenkinsop. "Tea is served, sir." A wordless cry broke from Eustace's lips. The tablecloth fell from his nerveless fingers, and the cat, Francis, falling on his head on the carpet, shot straight up the side of the wall and entrenched himself on top of the curtains. There was a pause. Eustace did not know quite what to say. He felt embarrassed. It was Orlando Wotherspoon who broke the silence. "So," said Orlando Wotherspoon. "At your old games, Mulliner, I perceive." Eustace's Aunt Georgiana was pointing dramatically. "He threw cucumber sandwiches at my cat." "So I observe," said Wotherspoon. He spoke in an unpleasant, quiet voice, and he was looking not unlike a high priest of one of the rougher religions who runs his eye over the human sacrifice preparatory to asking his caddy for the niblick. "Also, if I mistake not, sultana cake and muffins." "Would you require fresh muffins, sir?" asked Blenkinsop. "The case, in short, would appear to be on all fours," proceeded Wotherspoon, "with that of J.B. Stokes of 9 Manglesbury Mansions, West Kensington." "Listen," said Eustace, backing towards the window. "I can explain everything." "There is no need of explanations, Mulliner," said Orlando Wotherspoon. He had rolled up the left sleeve of his coat and was beginning to roll up the right. He twitched his biceps to limber it up. "The matter explains itself." Eustace's Aunt Georgiana, who had been standing under the curtain making chirruping noises, came back to the group in no agreeable frame of mind. Overwrought by what had occurred, Francis had cut her dead, and she was feeling it a good deal. "If I may use your telephone, Eustace," she said quietly, "I would like to ring up my lawyer and disinherit you. But first," she added to Wotherspoon, who was now inhaling and expelling the breath from his nostrils in rather a disturbing manner, "would you oblige me by thrashing him within an inch of his life?" "I was about to do so, madam," replied Wotherspoon courteously. "If this young lady will kindly stand a little to one side." "Shall I prepare some more cucumber sandwiches, sir?" asked Blenkinsop. "Wait," cried Marcella Tyrwhitt, who hitherto had not spoken. Orlando Wotherspoon shook his head gently. "If deprecating scenes of violence, it is your intention, Miss Tyrwhitt. Any relation of my old friend, Major General George Tyrwhitt of the Buffs, by the way?" "My uncle." "Well, well, I was dining with him only last night." "It's a small world, after all," said Lady Beasley. "It is indeed," said Orlando Wotherspoon. "So small that I feel there is scarcely room in it for both Mulliner, the cat-slosher, and myself. I shall therefore do my humble best to eliminate him. And as I was about to say, if, deprecating scenes of violence, you are about to plead for the young man, it will, I fear, be useless. I can listen to no intercession. The regulations of our Dumb Chums League are very strict." Marcella Tyrwhitt uttered a hard, rasping laugh. "Intercession," she said. "What do you mean, an intercession? I wasn't going to intercede for this wambling misfit. I was going to ask if I could have first whack." "Indeed? Might I inquire why?" Marcella's eyes flashed. "Eustace became convinced, he tells me, that she had Spanish blood in her." "Would you desire another sultana cake, sir?" asked Blenkinsop. "I'll tell you why," cried Marcella. "Do you know what this man has done? I left my dog Reginald in his care, and he swore to guard and cherish him. And what occurred? My back was hardly turned when he went and gave him away as a birthday present to some foul female of the name of Beatrice something." Eustace uttered a strangled cry. "Let me explain." "I was in Paris," proceeded Marcella, "walking along the Champs-Élysées, and I saw a girl coming towards me with a peak, and I said to myself, 'Hello, that peak looks extraordinarily like my Reginald.' And then she came up, and it was Reginald, and I said, 'Here! Hey, what are you doing with my peak, Reginald?' And this girl said, 'What do you mean, your peak, Reginald? It's my peak, Percival, and it was given to me as a birthday present by a friend of mine named Eustace Mulliner. And I bounded on to the next aeroplane and came over here to tear him into little shreds. And what I say is, it's a shame if I'm not to be allowed to go at him after all the trouble and expense I've been put to." And burying her lovely face in her hands, she broke into uncontrollable sobs. Orlando Wotherspoon looked at Lady Beasley. Lady Beasley looked at Orlando Wotherspoon. There was pity in their eyes. "There, there," said Lady Beasley. There, my dear." "Believe me, Miss Tyrwhitt," said Orlando Wotherspoon, patting her shoulder paternally, "there are few things I would not do for the niece of my old friend Major General George Tyrwhitt of the Buffs. But this is an occasion when, much as it may distress me, I must be firm. I shall have to make my report at the annual committee meeting of our Dumb Chums League, and how would I look explaining that I had stepped aside and allowed a delicately nurtured girl to act for me in a matter so important as the one now on the agenda? Consider, Miss Tyrwhitt, reflect." "That's all very well," sobbed Marcella, "but all the way over, all during those long, weary hours in the aeroplane, I was buoying myself up with the thought of what I was going to do to Eustace Mulliner when we met. See, I picked out my heaviest parasol." Orlando Wotherspoon eyed the dainty weapon with an indulgent smile. "I fear that would hardly meet such a case as this," he said. "You had far better leave the conduct of this affair to me." "Did you say more muffins, sir?" asked Blenkinsop. "I do not wish to boast," said Wotherspoon, "but I have had considerable experience. I have been formally thanked by my committee on several occasions." "So you see, dear," said Lady Beasley soothingly, "it will be ever so much better to—" "Any buttered toast, fancy cakes, or macaroons?" asked Blenkinsop. "Leave the matter entirely in Mr. Wotherspoon's hands. I know just how you feel. I am feeling the same myself. But even in these modern days, my dear, it is the woman's part to efface herself and—" "Oh, well," said Marcella moodily. Lady Beasley folded her in her arms, and over her shoulder nodded brightly at Orlando Wotherspoon. "Please go on, Mr. Wotherspoon," she said. Wotherspoon bowed with a formal word of thanks, and turning was just in time to see Eustace disappearing through the window. The fact is, as this dialogue progressed, Eustace had found himself more and more attracted by that open window. It had seemed to beckon to him. And at this juncture, dodging lightly round Blenkinsop, who had now lost his grip entirely and was suggesting things like watercress and fruit salad, he precipitated himself into the depths and, making a good landing, raced for the open spaces at an excellent rate of speed. That night, heavily cloaked and disguised in a false moustache, he called at my address, clamouring for tickets to Switzerland. He arrived there some few days later, and ever since has stuck to his duties with unremitting energy. So much so that in that letter which you saw me reading, he informs me that he has just been awarded the Order of the Crimson Edelweiss, 3rd class, with crossed cuckoo clocks, carrying with it the right to yodel in the presence of the Vice-President. A great honour for so young a man.